Hi guys, welcome along to today's painting session. I'm so excited. We're painting Icelandic poppies today, which are one of my favourite flowers. And I'm a bit sad because I don't actually have any of the real thing to hand, but don't you worry, this is a fantastically simple painting project where we look at lovely translucent layers of watercolour. So get your kit and let's get started. We're going to paint a few Icelandic poppies in a few different ways because you always get an incredible range on the stem. So I'm going to start by just giving us a bit of a help. So we're going to have, oh, the stems are so crazy. If you haven't seen an Icelandic poppy, I highly recommend you go and have a look. They are just amazing. So what I've done is I've done 3 faint pencil stems and just some little curves where the base of the flower is going to sit. And we're going to start off by creating the petals. And this is a lovely loose but layered project. So I'm going to start off with, a little one up here. So I'm going to create a little cup, a cup poppy, and I'm going to use the biggest brush I've got by just painting just 2 petals here that don't touch each other, because I want to have these crisp and dry, and we're going to layer them up with some other colour. But I am going to drop in just a little bit of cadmium yellow. So that was a very, very faint cadmium orange, so faint in fact. Right, here we go. We're going to paint another one down here that's a bit more open. So we're going to come in with some petals. They're a little bit more open here. And they are frilling out, and Icelandic poppies have this incredibly delicate, loose and frilly papery edge. So we're just smoothing that out, and this time, because they come in lots of different colours, I'm going to take the tiniest bit, in fact it almost feels like too much, of permanent rose, and I'm just going to drop that in at the bottom there. And then for a big main cadmium orange Icelandic poppy, we're going to do a sort of more full open flower. And so that is going to involve painting 1 petal up here and dropping in, I'm going to drop in a tiny bit of gold green mixed with sap green actually. Clean off the brush. You want it wet, but not so wet that it's sort of puddling on the page here. And then down here in a sort of windmill, using the belly of the brush to really get those broad strokes, and working fairly fast to make sure, you see, so it's dried so quickly. There, I just need to help it along a bit. There we go. And last, let's paint another one down there that's just not quite touching. And frilled edges, so I'm just sort of using the edge of the brush to frill it, and then a little bit of green. Just going to help it along a tiny bit because we're being sort of slightly conservative with the amount of water we use, but you can see from all of them that we've got a lovely delicate translucent flower with a little bit of colour in the base of those petals. So we're going to let that dry, and then we're going to come back and paint a second layer. You can see we've got nice crisp edges. This one's still nearly drying, but the rest are nice and dry, so we'll carry on. I'm now going to paint in the other petals that I want to see. So first off, down here, this flower is going to be sort of shooting upwards. Actually, yeah, shooting upwards. So in I go with a 3rd petal. and just the tiniest bit of pink, just dabbing that. And you see I'm just pulsing the brush on the spot. I'm not, unless I have to really help it along if it's dried too quickly, then that is all you should need if you've got the timing right and the water right. So that's looking really lovely, and that's going to crisp up. It's funny, at this point it always looks like that central petal could never get to the point where it looked like the other two, but it will. Have faith. Right, next petals, we're going to do a nice big open flower here, so we're going to have some overlapping petals. Sometimes you can just sort of do a nice outline, can't you, and fill it in. The most important thing is you try and do this in as few brush strokes as possible. And then the green, pulsed in, looking nice. Clean that brush off. You don't want it overly wet because I've got a really wet set of colour in the brush or in the palette already. And now finishing off, I might just overlap it a bit more. Bringing in that colour and that tiny bit of green. So I'm just going to pulse. There we go. Really nice. That's a really nice open one. And then up here, well, this is quite a nice experiment actually, because this petal here hasn't fully dried, but we do have already the crisp edges around the edge. So I think this will actually look quite cool. I'm just going to put a third petal in and drop in that bit of yellow in the base. Now whilst those are drying, we can paint in our stems. So I'm going to take a slightly smaller brush here. I'm using size 2, and I've got some Sap Green mixed with Cadmium Yellow, because Icelandic poppies have a lovely light green stem. And actually what's quite cool, because this is still wet, what'll happen, oh look at that, a lovely bit of blend, which I quite like. You don't have to have it, but it's kind of fun. And then this one here, I actually think I'm going to add in one more petal, because I rather like the idea of my stem not being seen right up to the top. So we'll just do one more petal, curling down. And don't forget that little bit of colour in the middle. Lovely. And then what will happen, I'll get the stem, and I might just get the tiniest bit of green touching, or maybe not. So I like to leave it to a chance a bit with watercolour. Lovely. Now these stems look great. I always like to add a little bit of depth even with a really light stem. So I've got a bit of sap green here, and I will just pick out a little bit of darkness on the stem there and just blend it in just on the side. Always a little bit at the top, as well as down the side. Once you've done it, you can always smooth it in, blend it in. Don't spend too much time doing this though, because you'll find yourself sort of getting a bit frustrated, and sort of your stem will get thicker and thicker as you try and sort of even up each side. So don't spend too much time. But I do like the idea of just dropping in a little bit more of that there. And you can see I'm just now spreading it out into more of a cup shape for these two side-on poppies. And they look lovely. But we've got the centre of this flower to work out, so we'll let this dry one more time. To do the centres of these flowers, it is really important to make sure these are bone dry. I'm bringing in 2 more small brushes just to help me do the detail in the middle, just in case I need them. Whoops. Okay. So this flower we're going to see in the centre. Icelandic poppies have a most incredible frilly collar of filaments, and they are they range in colour, but on the whole they're a sort of bright yellow colour. So using that curve as my sort of central sort of anchoring point, I'm going to paint a series of filaments that are quite long, quite spidery, and in a fairly concentrated cadmium yellow, because cadmium yellow, although we're painting on a very, very translucent flower, cadmium yellow is also a lighter colour, and we want to be able to get this in one go. Wonderful starburst, and I've done them at sort of a bit of a range of lengths, but on the whole they're all fairly sort of going to a sort of similar kind of radius. And then what I'm going to do is get even more concentrate cadmium yellow on my brush, and now I'm going to paint a cluster of dots in a halo around the edge, and some will sort of come down in a little bit more, but I'm not too worried about actually joining up these dots to the lines. It's more about giving an essence. Lovely, just such a cool flower. Trouble is, I've got a feeling every time I paint a flower with you guys, I'm going to be like, this is my favourite flower. No, this is my favourite flower. So I will try and just lay off the hyperbole, but my goodness, they're just lovely. It's probably why I do this for a job, isn't it? Okay, so the next thing is we've got this incredibly sort of dynamic dome in the middle, which has, it's a bit like a sort of a multi-hot cross bun, because it's got lots and lots of crosses on it. So we start with a little circle in a fairly concentrated cadmium yellow, and then I'm just going to basically draw a sort of childish little sunshine. I guess that's what it is. And don't worry if at this point you feel like it's all sort of getting a bit lost, because it's yellow on yellow on yellow, because we're going to be layering this up as it dries. Right, we've got this to a point where it's very nearly dry, and I quite like living dangerously and seeing what happens, so I'm going to keep going. So I've got some Sap Green here, and I'm going to paint in the gaps and just create little segments. And yeah, I'm quite enjoying actually the fact that there's a tiny bit of a blend. And what I'm trying to create is a little circular dome in the middle. And then I want to fill that in as well. Now at the moment it all looks a bit mad, doesn't it? And that's kind of cool, because what I'm going to start being able to do is to sort of mess it a bit, because that's sort of more how I like to paint. So I'm just drawing out some of this green and sort of just bringing it around the edges of this crazy poppy, and just starting to blend that yellow so it's not quite so stark against the green. I want it to sort of tuck in a little bit. There we go. That's kind of nice. And we're going to allow that to dry, and then we're going to go in for lots of lovely detail afterwards. It always looks a bit childish at this point, and I go, uh-oh, I think everyone's really lost faith in me. Don't worry. We just have to go through these phases to come out the other side with something glorious. Now, this is quite a fun bit. We are going to add some very pretty little ripples up the petals, because Icelandic poppies have these amazing creases. So I've got a very, very dilute pinky blush colour, and I'm just going to start from down in the centre and paint in a few, not too many. I don't want this to sort of become too sort of uniform or anything, but just a few little lines that follow the shape that we've created of the petals. Because they've got these incredible creases. And then for this one up here, I'm actually going to do orange with a fraction of green. There we go. Just, they're really, really faint. They're not very noticeable, but we know they're there. Right, so the last thing for these little lines is we're just going to add a few to our petals here as well. Oops, a little bit of a blob of water. So I'm just sort of picking out the petals that are underneath here. And then once we've added a few of these, we'll be ready to let it dry once and for all, and then come in and make that central bit look a little nicer. It's funny, it's quite something sort of sharing these processes with you sometimes, because I have to go through all this kind of, oh my goodness, it looks rubbish bit on my own, but it's quite nice because we can all go through it together, can't we? Right, cool, really pleased with that. I'll see you for one last go in a minute. Right, I'm excited for detail. This is my favourite bit. So everything's dry, and I need to mix up a bit of shadow mix. Just like to get on my brushes nice and wet. So we've got a bit of it going on here, but we need a little bit more. So a bit of Prussian Blue. And I've been rather enjoying some of the Umber. So just remember to wake up your paints. Lovely. Oh, that's gorgeous. And then that just means I can drop in into my green if I want. So I've got a little greeny shadow colour there. And I've got my main shadow colour. But I'm going to be doing this all with small brushes. So here we are back in the middle. So what I want to do, so I want to create, I've got a bit of fluff on my brush, this central funny seed head thing. So I'm just creating a bit of shadow around the edges of some of these little yellow sort of stars that come out of the end, and then just a bit of that. Nice. And then a bit of darkness around the bottom of the green anyway. Then I'm going to use a slightly larger brush because now we need the slightly sort of tricky, treacherous bit that we're going to just sort of blend out from that into the starburst of those little filaments. So we've got the tiniest bit of shadow on our brush, but really what I'm doing is I'm blending out from what's already on the page. And it's lovely because it sort of picks up some more of the yellow as well coming out. And this is just with a slightly wet brush. That's all I'm doing. I think that's really nice. And then just to finish off the centre, I'm going to add a little bit more darkness to the bottom and just allow it to bleed out if it wants to. That's absolutely fine by me. And then I'm going to give a little bit of this shadow to the stems and then we're done. So a bit of the shadow right up the top on that stem, just a little bit towards the base, and we'll pop it in here to create a bit more of that cup shape, a bit more of that cup shape there as well. And we are all done. What a satisfyingly simple flower that is. And yeah, maybe my husband might send me a bunch if he watches this, that'd be nice. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, and of course I'll be ever so grateful if you like, comment and subscribe, and of course if there's someone else you think might like these videos, share the video and see what they think, and you can paint along together. Anyway, I'll see you next time. Bye!